that we should take a little bit of a variation of our regular share of the Baal Shem Tov and do something from the Shla on Tainus, to understand what the essence of the Tainus is. And I brought you all a page. You can pass this out. Everyone take one page. Even if you just look at the words when I'm reading it, that's also helpful. It's good for you.
Just follow along.
I mean, I know you can't translate, but just follow along as we read it. That's all. It's helpful. It's helpful. It's good for you. It gives you more familiarity with the language. That's all. It's a good thing to do. Okay, so there's a minhag in Klal Yisrael that when you have an occasion going on, it's an inyan. Chazal tells us to learn about the inyan that's going on at the time. So on Pesach, you're supposed to learn Hilchos Pesach. And on Shavuos, learn Hilchos Shavuos. On Rosh Hashanah, Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. So now it's Shivas and B'Timers. So let's learn about Tainus. What's it all about? Okay, let's take a look. Amru HaKadmonim. Tanis Osios Tet Ani. You can take the letters and rearrange them. It comes out Tet Ani. What does that mean? Tet Ani. It means to give to the poor. Tet is an Arab way of saying give to the poor. V'zeh inyan ma she'omer Hazal. Igra the Tanisa Tzedakta. The schar you get for a tainus is tzedakah. Is that interesting? We think that the main schar that you get on a tainus is the fasting itself. Because the main schar that you get on the tainus is for the tzedakah you give on the tainus. Isn't that interesting? Look what he says. Haperush hu kisha mis'aneh. When a person fasts, oz hu margish tsar ha'ani. When you fast, you feel the pain of the ani. Shu chaser lechem. Now you know how an ani feels who doesn't have money to buy his daily bread.
Ani meaning a poor person.
A poor person,
Right.
who doesn't have money to buy his daily bread, and he's fasting every single day. So when you fast and you don't eat your bread, you don't have your regular breakfast that you normally have, you get to identify with the ani. Eichu b'tzar u'b'kev. And therefore, Merachem olav, you'll have more rachmanis on him. V'yitein mamonu v'tzedakah b'yom ha'tainus. That will urge you to give tzedakah on the tainus because you know how he feels. L'kayim ha'shenema v'yahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol miyodecha. You are expressing your love of Hashem with your money. Not only do you have to love Hashem with your heart and with your soul, but Odecha, according to one parish, is B'chol mamoncha. You have to also love Hashem, give to Hashem your money also. I'll just tell you an interesting thing, which is a mistake that many people make. We know that Erev Purim, they have plates on the tables before the Megillah. They have plates to give Megillah Geld, give for the Megillah Moaz Purim, or for Machzas HaShekel, or for Matanis Levyonim. They have these plates out in Shul. Do you know when the proper time to give that money is? People think the proper time to give it is when you come to Shul, Leil Purim, for the Megillah. So before the Megillah reading, you have all these plates to deposit, your money here and there and there. That's true. Do you know where it's true? When they read the Megillah on the 14th, on Yud Daled, then, Erev Purim, you come to Shul, you give Machzah Shekel, Moaz Purim, whatever it is. Why? Because it's Yud Gimel. They read the Megillah on Leil Yud Daled, the night of the 14th, and the day is the Yud Gimel, and Yud Gimel is Tainus Esther for them. That's the day to give tzedakah. But we in Yerushalayim or other cities that celebrate Purim on Tesvav, on the 15th of Adar,
Some late to give them the money.
when are you going to give it? So many people think you give it before you come to shul, before you go, and then the plates. It's a mistake. You have to give it on Yud Gimel, on Tainus Esther. So for us, there's a day of separation between Tainus Esther and the Megillah, and the day we celebrate Purim. So you don't give the night before, or an hour before you start the Megillah. You have to give it on Tainus Esther, because the Tainus is the time to give the tzedakah. That's what he says over here. Igor the Tainisa tzedakah. You get the schar. The fasting is very good, fasting. But what's worth more? Which is a bigger mitzvah? To give tzedakah or to fast? Of course, tzedakah is a much bigger mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to say, to give tzedakah. So that the main schar that you get of the fasting is the tzedakah that you give on the fast. So that is a mistake that many people make. I wanted to bring it up because it's common in the shuls. You see, if the plates are out before the Megillah reading, people deposit the money. The time to do it is on Yud Gimel, on the Tainus Esther. That's the time to do it. Okay, we'll go further. V'yesh omrim, some hold on Tainus Esther, or any other Tainus. Listen to this very interesting idea. She'yitein la'ani mashalo ochal hayom. The value of the food that you did not eat, give that to the ani, or give him the actual food itself. What you would eat for breakfast or for lunch or whatever it is, give that to the ani. Or the value of it. She'im lo asakei. If you didn't do it, listen to what he says, a very interesting thing. There's a shayach in the time of the shlah. If you didn't give him like a pidyon, a redemption or a representation of what you ate, what does it look like? What he says it look like? Nira kemi shelo his ane l'shem shemayim rak kadei laharviach b'tainisum ma'at.
It's like you ate. It's like you ate.
No, he's saying if you don't, you're supposed to eat today, right? So I'm not eating. I'm going to fast. So what am I going to do with the food that I hadn't prepared to eat? Well, I'm going to save it, right? I'll save it. So if you don't give it away to the ani, it looks like the only reason you're fasting is because you want to save yourself the food. You have less expenses this week. Less expenses this week. So therefore, to show that you're not trying to save money by fasting, give it away to the ani. And see, this is in his time, in the Shlah's time, I guess society was much poorer. Nobody would think that we are doing such a thing. If I'm fasting and I'm going to put away the food in the refrigerator, wait till after the fast to eat it, I'm trying to save money by not eating. Because I want to skip on the food because I want to save money. We wouldn't do such a thing. We're not in that level of living. But are people who are poor, and every single day was an important expense for them. And it could be possible in those days that a person would say, I don't make so much money. I'll fast one day to save the food. I'll fast one day. So people might think that you're not fasting really for the mitzvah of fasting. You're fasting to save the money, to save the food. That's all. Therefore, to avoid that maris ayin, that thought, give that food that you were supposed to eat not into the refrigerator. Give it away to a poor person. Therefore, no one would suspect that you're doing the fasting just to save on the expenses. Okay. Now we get into the real tough stuff. Siv Beis. Kasuv. We call Eitz Hagan Achol Tochal. Adam Rishon was told, from all the trees eat. Eitz Hadas Tovara Lo Tochal Mimenu. One tree you have to avoid. Eitz Hadas. Yesh Lakshos. Now he's asking a very good question. L'maynaf gemina amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu mikol eitz hagan achol tochal. Why did Hashem have to tell Adam Rishon to eat from the other trees? He doesn't know himself to eat. He wanted to tell him Be'ikar not to eat from the eitz hadas. He has to tell him that everything else he should eat. He knows himself. If he was hungry, he goes to eat. He only has one mitzvah to avoid the eitz hadas. Why do you have to tell him that everything else you can eat from? That's his question. The Torah doesn't waste words. Wouldn't it be enough that he shouldn't tell him that? He would understand himself. It would be enough only to tell Adam Rishon not to eat Eitz Hadas. Now he's trying to explain why. Why did Hashem tell him, eat from the other trees? Ha'inyan, ilu lo chata Adam. Adam Rishon not sinned. Oz hayasa mitzvahs asay sheyochel mikol. You hear that? He's talking about now before the sin. Before the sin. Had Adam Rishon not sinned, it would be a mitzvah. Not he is telling him, if you want to eat, go ahead and eat the rest of the tree. No. I'm telling you it's a mitzvah to eat from all of them. Not only to avoid the middle tree, the Eitz Hadas, but you should dafka eat from the other ones. Im what? Im hoya nishar b'kvodo. If he would have the level of honor and kavod of being the person that Adam Rishon was created as by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the lofty, holy person Adam Rishon was created as, for him it would be a mitzvah to eat from all the other trees. He would be like an angel, maybe even higher than the angels. You know what the Chazal tell us? That before Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, the Malachim looked at Adam Rishon and they said to him, like they say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzvakos. That's how high and lofty they thought of Adam Rishon. He was higher than a Malach. He was a complete entity of Kedusha. Complete entity of Kedusha. His entire body was a body of Kedusha. There was no difference between his hand, his foot, and his bris milah. They were all in total service of Hashem.
So what made the angels all of a sudden completely turn their opinion about a human? Because before Hashem created the human, he asked the angels, and they said, no, don't create a human because he's going to sin. And now you're telling me that now they consider him an angel.
Well, it could be. It could be once they saw what he was, they changed their mind, or they were different angels, whatever. You can give it to on that. Either they were different angels, or the angels changed their minds once they saw what the creation was. They said, Hashem knows better than us. Such a being, we can't even understand what that means. We can't understand what that means because we're so. Physical. We're so animalistic. We have very much in common with animals. Very much in common with animals. They eat and they give out the waste. We eat, we give out the waste. We do very much the same thing. They procreate, we procreate. We eat, they eat. We're very, very animalistic. We have one thing which is above them. One thing we have the intelligence, we have a neshama, which they don't have. And we also have the ability, two things. We also have the ability to speak. Animals can only make sounds, but they don't speak. They cannot utter words. Well, maybe a parrot can. Parrot can utter words. It copies us, but it doesn't understand what it's saying. But so we have
the ability to believe in Hashem.
No, well, that's part of the intelligence, part of the neshama, correct. But otherwise, we're extremely, extremely animalistic. But that was only us after the Chet of Adam Rishon. When we turned to become animalistic beings. Hashem did not mean us to be this way. We were created that our bodies were a complete entity of Kedusha. The heel of our foot, Adam Rishon's foot, was brighter than the sun. That's an example that Chazal give. The heel of Adam Rishon's foot was brighter than the sun. It was so holy, so kadosh. That's what Adam Rishon was. So imagine when such a person is created and he eats an angel sort of eats from the other trees. It's not the eating that we understand. Not the eating that we understand at all. I'll give you another example to explain it. When we eat something, we have on our tongue taste buds. These taste buds are there for a very important reason. One of the main reasons is, if something tastes bad, that's a hint for us that it's not good to eat. If it has a bad taste, that means that it's spoiled, that it's rotten, that it's decayed, it's full of bacteria, it's full of microbes that are going to be harmful for us. So Hashem gave into our mouth taste buds, which are very, very sensitive, and they can tell when something is healthful and not healthful. But these taste buds serve another purpose. They make the food enjoyable. We have within us a Yetzer Hara that enjoys life. And because he's part and parcel with us, within every cell that we exist, it's in part and parcel with our tongue also, it gives us enjoyment. Now let me tell you something. Before Adam HaRishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, he did not experience enjoyment when he ate. There were no pleasure sensors, no pleasure senses. Before Adam HaRishon ate, everything was all pure intelligence, pure rationale. We can't understand that. We cannot understand that, what that means, because we don't identify with it. We feel everything. We like it and we don't like it. We enjoy it and we don't enjoy it. We feel everything. We're very sensitive. Adam HaRishon did not have that sensitivity, which is physical at all. Everything on the HaRishon was totally mental. Totally mental. It was all in the area of the neshama, which is in the olam of kedusha. So if he would eat from all the trees in the Gan Eden, it would all be an eating like a malach eats. There would be no physical enjoyment because we didn't have the ability to feel enjoyment. The Yetzer Hara, which gives us that, was external to us before the Chet. All external. And therefore, that's the answer to what the Shla asked. Why did Hashem have to tell Adam HaRishon to eat? He should have only told him to avoid eating from the Eitz Hadas. Why did he tell him from everything else he should eat? No. Because a person like Adam HaRishon, before the Chet, Davka for him, it's a big inyan to eat. It's an act of kedusha. It's an act of tikkun ha'olam. Let's look at its inside. Look at what it says. Ilu lo chata Adam, had Adam HaRishon not sinned, oz ha'itza mitzvahs asay sheyochal mikol, im ha'yanisha bekvoda. It would be a mitzvah asay for him to eat if he would have remained in his honor before the Avera. V'hu besod selem udmush shel malach kaviyachol. It would be like a malach. V'kol ma shehoya ochel hoya kamo korban. Hear that what he says? Any eating that he would have done would have been like a korban. Adam HaRishon's eating. It would be completely turned into an entity of kedusha inside him. Your innards, your intestines are holy. The food that's digested in you becomes holy like a carbon. Aval, that's all before the Aver. However, afterwards, what? He had a big pagam, and he had a tremendous decline from his level of kedusha, and he became now animalistic. Now he enjoys things. So what would he have to do? He would have to bring himself to be a carbon. He could not just eat and become a carbon because he's kadosh. He'd have to bring himself on the mizbeach to become a carbon. Dainu, how is he to do that? Betainios. Oh, now we're getting to it. How is he going to become a carbon? Now he has to become a carbon by not eating. Before he would eat, his eating would be a carbon. And now after the achet of the Eitz Hadas, he can only become a carbon when he does not eat. When he sacrifices himself. He sacrifices his blood. He sacrifices the meat, which is used up as energy to support himself when he doesn't eat. The fat of his body, his blood becomes lessened. It becomes consumed. The body has to consume it to keep the energy. You hear that? After Adam Rishon sinned, he fasted the rest of his life. You hear that? He fasted the rest kol yomav to make up for what he had done. He ate at night, but he didn't eat by day. For Rama is the davar, Chai, how long did he live? Teisha me'os u'shloshim, 930 years. That comes out to minyan tinius. Isn't that amazing? The gematria of Tainus is 930. That is the amount of years that Adam Rishon lived. That's a remez that the rest of his life, he fasted every single day. Every single day of his life, he fasted to make up for eating from the Eitz Hadas. Yafal Pisha B'divrei Razal, Huskar Sha'asa Tshuva Kuf Lamed Shana. Chazal tell us that he only did tshuva for 130 years. So what are you telling me that he fasted the rest of his life to 930? Says the Shlog, Zohi HaTshuva HaChamurish Asa. The main tshuva was the first 130 years, when he was thrown out of the Gan Eden. But the minor and continuous tshuva continued on the rest of his life. You know who else did tshuva for the rest of his life after he did an Aveira? The other person who received 70 years of Adam Rishon. According to some opinions, Adam Rishon was supposed to live 1,000 years, but he gave away 70 years to David HaMelech. David HaMelech lived till 70, Adam Rishon lived 930, and David HaMelech, after his Aveira of Bathsheba, fasted the rest of his life. Also. He was the Gilgal of Adam Rishon. Just like Adam Rishon fasted the rest of his life, also David HaMelech fasted the rest of his life, every single day. Belibi cholal bekirbi. That's what he said. Ulach kuf lamashana pasuk mitshuva chachmura of a batainis hoyu kol yamav. Yalzeh bo ha-remez tikon tfilasi Chitoris lefanecha, Rosh Tevos, Tov, Tov, Kuf, Lamed. Tikon Tvilasi, Tov, Tov, Kuf, Lamed, Chitoris lefanecha, Rosh Tevos, 930. He was mispalo for 930 years for a kapara, and that David HaMelech said that also in Tehillim. Okay. Next paragraph, Gimel, up on top. V'hinei. Top of the page. Mikoach ha'achila himshich al atzmo achirat or akiras hachomer. Basar v'dam kosnos or ubasar. Because he ate the Aveira, he made the ore that he was enveloped in a complete coating of light. But that ore, Aleph Vav Reish, turned into Kosnos or a coat of skin and flesh. Al kain hutzrich la'achnio b'tainios. He had to lower it, to subdue it by fasting. V'zeu taimam shel Rabbi Elazar Reish Lakish shesovrim hayoshev b'tainis nikra kadosh v'chasid. Rabbi Elazar and Reish Lakish hold that a person who is fasting is called kadosh v'chasid. Now, you know, I want to tell you something very important. In the times of the Tanoim and the Maroyim, it was very common. They often fasted for kapara. They often fasted for kapara. Even later, in the times of the Rishonim,
Not every day.
no, not every day. No, Chalila v'chas.
Usually on Monday and Thursday.
Mondays and Thursdays. In the times of the Rishonim, even in Europe before World War II, there were many Jews who fasted on Monday and Thursday. My wife's grandfather, who lived in Hungary, when he heard what was going on, word got to them about what the Nazis in Yimach Shemam were doing. He started to fast Monday and Thursday, every single day. Here in Yerushalayim, when I came to Israel, 1971, so Rav Shalom Shvadron, if you heard about him, Rav Shalom Shvadron, he lived here in Shaarei Chesed. He was a famous Maggid who went all over the world giving drushes, and he lived here in Shaarei Chesed. He davened in the Groshu in Shaarei Chesed. He fasted Mondays and Thursdays. And during Elul, he was on Tainus Dibur, Mondays and Thursdays. There are many people who did that in Europe. They fasted, because they know that fasting is a kapara. However, the Baal Shem Tov and the Gra, and it's brought in the Mishnah Berurah, says the following. It's very important for us. Our generation is not recommended to fast. Why? Because we don't have the strong constitution that they had in earlier generations. They could take it, and it did not weaken them like it weakens us. When we fast, we're weak. We don't have koach.
It was only a day fast. So it wasn't a 24-hour fast.
No, of course, but still, they were able to take it much better than we are. So what the Gra and the Baal Shem Tov recommend is, instead of fasting a food fast, have a Tainus Dibur. A Tainus Dibur that everyone can do. You know what that is, right? Tainus Dibur means not to speak. Not to speak. Only davening and learning. Not to speak. You're fasting, your tongue is fasting. That everyone can do. It doesn't weaken you. You can eat, you can drink, but you don't talk to anybody about anything except Torah and Tefillah or mitzvahs.
On those 2 days only.
Anytime you want. You decide you want to do a Tainus Dibur. Many people do it on Shabbos, even Bizman Hazeh. On Shabbos, they do not speak at all. How are you? What's doing? You know, I haven't seen you in such a long time. What's the latest? None of that. Shabbos is Kadosh. Holy day. No speaking about mundane worldly things. Only Torah and Tefillah. Or mitzvahs. Anything having to do with Kedusha, with Hashem, you can speak on Shabbos. But the rest of the Shabbos, no speaking at all. Complete relaxation. And you know something? It's one of the best methods of having really menucha. When you talk about everything else in the world, about politics and all kinds of things, and corona and all these things, it disturbs your menuchas HaShabbos. You don't have real rest on Shabbos. You want to have an enjoyable, restful Shabbos? Cut out the world. Don't speak about it. Don't speak about it. Daven on Shabbos, learn on Shabbos, go to a shir, say Tehillim on Shabbos, but not to speak about, any other thing on Shabbos at all. That's a wonderful thing. I tell you the truth, I'm not bragging at all. Many years ago, I decided to take it on, and I have the most wonderful Shabbosim. Since that time on Shabbos, I can't speak about anything else.
But Shabbos is supposed to be for families, so you don't speak to your own family?
Yes, I tell them Dvar Torah. At the table, if I want to ask for something at the table, I point to it. They know already. They know already. I don't have to ask them for it. They understand. And it's a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing. And it made a hashpah on everybody else at the table too, at the family. It's a wonderful thing. I can tell you, it's great. It made my Shabbos a different world altogether. And not only did it help me on Shabbos, it helped me during the week too. because the Shabbos influences the whole week. It's the makor of bracha for the whole week. So by speaking during the week also is a different kind of speaking. And I remember I told you what the Gra said when he wrote his letter to his family when he was away. He says the main schar in Olam Haba, that was a tremendous chiddush. The Gra, who was such a masmid, he counted the seconds, and he had a book. The seconds that he wasted from Bittul Torah, he counted the seconds and wrote it down in a book to do tshuva on the seconds. And added up at the end of the year, maybe a couple of minutes that he wasted and didn't learn. He says, not my learning is the main schar in Olam Haba. The main schar in Olam Haba is what you do with your mouth. The things you do with your mouth or you don't do with your mouth. And if you look at the Al-Chetz, when you say the Al-Chetz on Yom Kippur, or Erev Yom Kippur, most of the Al-Chetz have to do with the virus of the peh. Most of them. Most of the Al-Chetz have to do with the virus of the peh. So my Tainis Dibur on Shabbos influenced me to be careful, much more so, with my speech during the week as well. And Baruch Hashem, I'm far from perfect, very far from perfect, but it helped me a lot to curtail my speaking during the week also. And that's the main Olam Haba, says the Gra. The main Olam Haba, and the Gra says these words. The peh is Kodesh Kadashim. We don't realize what the peh is. Speech. We're the only ones who have speech. Animals don't have speech. They have only sounds that they make. But they don't have the ability to say words. We say words, and where the ability to say words came from, Vayipach be'apav nishmas chayim. When the Rishon was created, he wasn't able to speak. Hashem blew into Hashem's into other Rishon's nostrils this neshama, and the neshama gives us the ability to speak. Amazing koach that we have. We communicate to each other by speech. The speech is Kodesh Kadashim, and therefore, since it is so holy, on Shabbos, which is the day of the holiest day of the year, and not like people think that Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. It's not. Shabbos has more Kedusha than Yom Kippur, and therefore on that day, we should surely be careful with what comes out of our mouth. Okay. So, the Gra and the Baal Shem Tov, they may have fasted, but they say for everybody else, a Tainis Dibur is the recommended kind of fasting. Fasting of speech, not fasting from eating and drinking. We're too weak. It weakens us. We can't learn properly. We can't do mitzvahs properly when we're fasting.
The trouble with us is that we take such care and are very concerned about what we put in our mouth, but not what comes out of it.
Well, that's part of it. That's exactly the same idea. That's why Tainis Dibur is wonderful. Tainis Dibur. All right. So we do the fasting in order to cleanse ourselves. The physical fasting cleanses the body from the impurities and the imperfections of it. Now we go up to a paragraph Dalet. V'zeh loshen hazor pasuk dodi li v'ani lo haroeh b'shoshanim. This now explains a little more about the Tainis. Shlomo HaMelech wrote that Hashem, my God, is to me, v'ani lo, and I am to him. We have a relationship, and they describe Hashem haroeh b'shoshanim. God is the shepherd of the roses. What does it mean he's the shepherd of the roses? What does that mean, the roses? HaKadosh Baruch Hu manik es ha'olam b'chesed u'bedin. Hashem protects the world with two paradoxical forces. One is kindness and one is din, a firmness, the opposite of kindness. Shehu remez hashoshanim, which is described in a remez by roses. Why? Sheyesh behem odem v'luban. Roses have two colors basically. There's red roses and there's white roses. So those two colors are representative of chesed and din. The white is the representative of the chesed, and the red, the representation of din. The kach ha-korban, when a korban is brought on the mizbeach, it's also from red and white. How do you see that? Haktores, mehem levanim, mehem adumim. From the ketores, you have white and red. Halevona, the frankincense, is levana, is white. Mordoror is adom, it's red. The hareach ole me adom v'lavan. And the reach goes up to Kodesh Baruch Hu from the red and the white, and it goes up, and it reich nichoch l'Hashem, that brings the kapara. The alkein manik olamo kishoshanim. That's why Hashem conducts this world like roses. Shehem adom v'lavan. Shekasuv lahakriv li chelev v'dam. Now we understand what we accomplish by fasting. We're giving up to Hashem our physical fat and our blood. The fat is white and the blood is red. Umiskapelo, and you get a kapara. Vizehu adom vizeh lavan. Now we understand what we're accomplishing when we fast. We fast physically, we give over white, and we give over red. That is our flesh. Our fat is white, and the blood is the red. So we're sacrificing that on the Mizbeach to Hashem when we fast. Okay, let's go on. The Shlosh says he studied the Talmidim of the Arizal's writings, and this is what they said. Hatainis he domet lekarban. Fasting is similar to a karban. V'yo inyan, how is it similar to a karban? Ki af al pi shemetzinu shoha'achila ki sha'adam mechaven ba hi kavona gedola ad ma'od. Now listen to this. This is very important. When a person eats, it's one of the most important things that a person can do in his life is to eat. Now that seems to be quite the opposite of what we were saying. We're saying all along that we're very animalistic, and we eat the food, and we enjoy it, we have these taste buds. So how can he say over here, he means to say the following. You know, there's two kinds of eating. Let me give you an example. Two kinds of eating. You're going to like this, Chano. Like this one. There was a Rebbe who was giving a tish. And he had his chazidim at the tish. And there was a plate of fruit in front of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe took an apple, and he made a bracha on the apple and ate it. And he has a chassid sitting there like Chanoch, and Chanoch is eyeing the Rebbe, and he's eating these apples. He says, you know that? That's interesting. Rebbe took an apple to eat, the tish. I can also be a Rebbe. So he went home. On the way home, he passed in the shuk, bought himself a kilo of apples, and he ate the apple. He says, I'm a Rebbe too. My Rebbe ate an apple. How can I also eat an apple? Comes back to the next tish, sits down. The Rebbe is looking at him, and the Rebbe says, I could see on your face is a change of what was before and what is now. And I'll tell you what you don't understand. There's two ways to eat an apple. You can eat an apple to make the bracha, or you can make a bracha to eat the apple. When you bought the kilo of apples, you made a bracha in order to eat the apple. That was your goal, to eat the apple. When I took the apple in order to make the bracha. You hear that? That's the difference between Mizrach and Ma'ariv. It's the difference between day and night. Many years ago, I had a discussion with my wife, and I couldn't understand what she was telling me. Didn't understand what she was telling me. But she was right. She was talking about eating so that you can do Birchas HaMazon. If you don't eat, you can't do Birchas HaMazon. I said to me, I never heard of such a thing. You eat to do Birchas HaMazon? She says, when you eat, you finish, you do Birchas HaMazon. You don't eat in order to do Birchas HaMazon. Who heard of such a thing? The Torah says, V'yachalta, v'savata, uveirachta. You eat, you're satisfied, do Birchas HaMazon, speak a bracha. She says, no. You eat in order to make the bracha. Never heard of such a thing. Until I learned more, and she's 100% right. That's what the Rabbi was telling this chassid. I took the apple in order so I could make the bracha. I think I was hungry to eat the apple. Wasn't hungry to eat the apple. I wanted to connect with Hashem. I used the apple only as a medium. It is a bridge for me to cross over that bridge and connect with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's why I ate the apple. You went ahead, you went to the shuk and bought apples because you wanted to eat the apple. You weren't interested in connecting to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Two people could be sitting at the same table, side by side. One's eating, the other one's eating. One's in Gan Eden and the other one's in Gehenna. They do the exact same thing. Why is that so? Because it all depends on your kavanah. All depends on your kavanah. How are you eating? Why are you eating? What are you thinking about when you're eating? People think, Avodas Hashem. What's Avodas Hashem? I do davening. It's Avodas Hashem. I'm talking to Hashem. I'm serving Hashem. I'm bowing to Hashem. That's Avodas Hashem. I'll tell you something. Learning Torah is also Avodas Hashem. I'll tell you something more. Eating is also Avodas Hashem.
So the Pirkei Avot, if three people are sitting down and eating together and they don't speak words of Torah, or they don't bench together, they're like animals.
You're right, but they're talking about something else. It's in the same category. You're right. They're saying that you should have divrei Torah at the meal. That's what he's saying there at Pirkei Avos.
Or thing that they have to bench also.
Yeah, okay, bench should be, but you have to. But basically, he's saying when you have a meal, you have to have a dvar Torah. What do you mean to eat without dvar Torah? You eat without thinking about the Torah at all. Okay, but the Shtor is saying something else. The Baal Shem Tov is saying something else. They're saying a very important thing. It also comes from the Zohar, from the Arizal. The actual eating itself, without saying divrei Torah, the actual eating itself is an avoda. This eating is an act of, it's like davening, it's like learning. I don't have to serve Hashem only through a sefer by reading Tehillim, or I can serve Hashem through eating. If I eat properly, I am serving Hashem. Like this person, the Rebbe, who took the apple to make the bracha. So for him, the service of Hashem was the bracha, mainly the bracha. But it's much deeper than that, much deeper than that. I'll give you a little example of why the eating itself is a service of Hashem. When Adam Rishon sinned, and I'm not putting Adam Rishon down, if we were living in Adam Rishon's times, we would have done the same thing. We've done the same thing. You come home, you have a wife, she's a tzadekis, you have no questions. She uses the best kashrus in the world. She wouldn't use anything which is a low kashrus. She's the best kashrus in the world. You don't have to ask any questions. Where did you buy it? What ingredients it has? Your wife puts down on the table. You have the tzaddikas and Eishus Chayil. You have no question. Other mission comes home, sits down at the table. His wife puts down food. He has to ask what, where, when. If my wife gave it to me to eat, I eat. That's what he says to Hashem. What do you want from me? Your wife, you created her, and she gave me to eat. I have to ask questions. What am I eating? If she gave to me, I'm a saimach on her. We would have done the same thing. That's not the point. But however, so I'm not putting other Rishon down, even though it was an Avera. It was an Avera. But what happened as a result was, there became now, in all food in the world, there's now impurities. All food in the world became impure because an Avera went into that food. It's very important to understand this. It's not only the apple that he ate from, or whatever it was that he ate. All food in the world has impurities. And I'm not talking about the waste product of the food that we don't eat. It's in the pits or the shell. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the meat of the fruit. The part of the apple that we do eat. The part of the meat that we do eat. There's impurities in the meat, no matter if it's 1,000% kosher. It has an innate impurity in it. Why? Because there's impurity in the entire physical world because of the Chet of Adam Harishon. And when you eat, you have now a chance to be metak in that food. You have a chance to remove the impurity. How are you going to do that? Not by spitting out the waste. No. I'm talking about the food that you're going to swallow. That's kosher, that's healthful, that's nutritious. Besides the bracha is only you're going to add to it. But by having the kavanah, that when I eat this food, I want with my machshava to withdraw the impurities and let the kedusha, or let's put it this way, I want to withdraw from the food the kedusha that's in the food and separate it. All food has in it kedusha, and it has, let's call it impurity, chol, kodesh and chol. Now I want to say call it tuma, but kodesh and chol. When I eat, I want, with my mind, with my machshava, to withdraw the kedusha, separate it from the chol. And the kedusha should remain with me, and the chol should be let it do what it has to do. By doing that, I'm being metaken the avera of Adam Harishon. Hear that? By that machshava, that kavanah gadol, that's what the Mashlah is saying. When you eat, if you have that machshava, you are making a tikkun in the food itself, and you're correcting the chet of Adam Harishon. Don't forget, he was your father. And we, as his descendants, we have an obligation to make a tikkun for Adam Harishon's avera. So if we eat in him, and it's a mitzvah, his eating was an avera. We eat as a mitzvah. If we eat on Shabbos, it's a mitzvah to eat. Eat a sudas mitzvah. Eat at a chasana, at a bris. It's a sudas mitzvah. Your eating is a tikkun for the chet of Adam Harishon. However, you have to remember that when you're eating, that I'm eating to be masakin the chet of Adam Harishon. That's a kavanah gedola ma'od, that I want to withdraw the kedusha and separate it from the chol.
What is connected with that? The eating of the Seudah Shlishi, you remembered also the tikkun for the milchama Gog v'Gagog.
No, it's not a tikkun. It's not a tikkun. It's one of the schuyot that if you eat the shalosh sudah, that you'll be zeicha to have a shmira against milchama. It's not. It doesn't. Shmira. It's a shmira. So that's what the shlah meant. It says if you eat with the kavanah gedola, it's a davar gadol ma'od. Gadol ma'od. Mikol makom. Nevertheless, going back further now in the shlah, Harasahi misatil eila. What you're accomplishing when you eat is you're giving up service from here to above. Kidmus tchilas hakarbon, like a carbon. Achatainis. Now, this is the main point. Now, remember this now. What does the tainis do? Hu kisiyum inyan carbon me'elu lasata. When we eat or we bring a carbon, we're offering up from here to above. What happens after the carbon is brought? After the carbon is brought, Hashem sends down energies, wonderful energies of bracha and shefa to this world. When we fast, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're bringing down energies for tikkun of this world. That's what tainus does. When we offer up our blood, we offer up our fat. That brings down the positive energies that a regular carbon brings down. You bring a carbon on the mizbeach, you sacrifice the blood, the white, the fat, and it goes up reich nichoch Hashem and brings down a shefa of tikkun to this world. Our fasting does exactly the same thing. It brings down a shefa of energy which makes tikkun in the whole world. And this is what you have to think about when you fast. Every time you fast, you have to realize that you're bringing down energies of tikkun to the world, which is accomplished in the same way as bringing a carbon. A carbon goes up, and it brings down the shefa of tikkun to the world. Our fasting does exactly the same thing. That is the effect of the tainus, and that's what you have to have in mind on a day like today, when you're fasting, that the fasting brings down this tikkun of energy that's going to make a tikkun in the world, the same thing that a regular carbon does. Giving up of our blood and of our fat to the world brings up this avodah to Hashem, and it sends down a tikkun to masak in the world too. That's basically what happens every single time we fast. But the point is, if you don't have that in mind, then it's not accomplished in the same way. Thinking of the dynamics and of that mechanism makes that happen on a much higher quality level. That's what fasting is all about. Now that's the main point. Okay, we're finished with today, Rabbi side. So we had the schus to understand what we're doing when we fast. Not just to do it because it's a mitzvah to do it, but to understand the dynamics of what happens when we do fast.
Like we say, we do before Yom Kippur, we eat a lot, and they say as if that is a day of fast.
Right.
And I never understand that concept. How it can be to eat, and that should be, but what I understand now is to bring this energy down, this dynamic.
Well, there you see.
Eating properly.
The eating erev Yom Kippur enables you to fast on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So therefore, that eating is also like a fasting. Since if you don't eat erev Yom Kippur, you won't be able to fast Yom Kippur. You have to eat to have energy to fast. So that eating is like fasting itself. It's like part of the fasting.
Okay.
All right, understand? Okay, that's it for today, Rabbi say. Okay.
Yeah.
So next Sunday, Mitzvah Shem, we'll be back with the Shem Tov again. But today we had to do this because it's in Yom Tov.
No, this is very good.